Goeiedag and welcome! Today I will be doing my January wrap up and my February TBR. Even though I'm not that big into TBRs, I have a couple of books I definitely want to read in February, so I'll just do a TBR either way and we'll see what happens. But we'll start off with a wrap up right now. I only read 5 books in January. One of those books, Milk and Honey. I heard so much of this that I was curious what this book entailed, so I bought it and I read it. Even though it contains some fairly good poems, most of them are just mediocre or not even that great in my opinion. About 4 stars, simply because of the couple poems that were good, were so good that I almost perfectly reflected situations I have encountered in the past. So I thought that deserved a high rating because it's very difficult to write good poems about those situations. But if you want to read good poetry, I think there will be something else you can find that you might like better. But the first book I finished this month, I already started in December, and it is Named of the Dragon by Susanna Kearsley. I really enjoyed Christmassy read because it is actually just a contemporary with a bit of hidden romance in it and mostly a bit of a mystery. I loved it. I liked the characters, I liked the way they were written, and I also liked the scenery in this. I believe I rated this 3.5 stars, and even though I rated Milk and Honey higher, I believe that this was a better book. The next book I finished was A Modest Proposal by Jonathan Swift. I was really curious about this book because apparently some people like it and some people don't, which is logical because it is a classic. But I really enjoyed the writing style and the way that era was portrayed in this book, the way that you could see how people thought, and you could definitely see that it was written for scholarly people. I thoroughly enjoyed the Battle of the Books, one of the longest satirical parts in here. From the beginning on, I was a lot into satire, which is why I actually bought this book. And even though it took a lot of time to get into it, I had to try a couple of times to read it before I got into it. I still rated it, I believe, somewhere between 3 and 4 stars because it was just so enjoyable. Second book I finished in January was A Monster Calls by Patrick Ness, which was decent. I liked it, but I do not get why people would cry. Of course, this is a sad book and it is a story that deals with the different phases of grief, but the only time I actually got the feeling that I might tear up was actually in the final sentences of the last page. The atmosphere and the graphics in this book were really good. I really enjoyed reading it. I got what the book was about, but it was not really a book for me. So, well, I rated it, I believe, 3.5 or 4 stars because it wasn't really for me. Final book I read in January, even though I finished it at February 1st. I will just talk about it in this wrap up, and that is Stalking Jack the Ripper by Carrie Maniscalco, a story about a girl who is living in Victorian London and she's trying to find out who Jack the Ripper was. It was very well written and the writing got better near the ending of the book, but pacing was slow at times and such a little stuff happened and it was really hard to stay into the story. So I almost DNF'd it more than once, more than 5 times actually. I'm glad I finished it. I'm still maybe considering reading the next one, but I don't know. It depends on how I feel about it when that book released. I rated it 3 or 3.5 stars. If you're into serial killer stories and you want to learn a bit about what Victorian London was like, because that was really well written into the story, then I'd recommend this book to you. But it was a little bit too slow for me and also a little bit too juvenile, so I don't know, not really my cup of tea. And now we go on with my very ambitious TBR because I do not read very fast. I have a TBR of 6 books and normally I would read like a book per week. So this is gonna be very bumpy ride and I hope I will get to all those books. The first book is Hex by Thomas Oldeheuvelt. This is actually a Dutch thriller and it's blurred by Stephen King, so yeah. The description on the back was really intriguing about a witch that was living somewhere and people who try to go viral with a video of her, and then she starts to let the town slide down back into the Middle Ages. The original language of this book is Dutch, but when I was in the bookstore, funny story, I saw the English version first and I actually like the English cover a lot better. And I almost contemplated buying that one until I discovered that it wasn't originally written in Dutch. The next book on my TBR is Every Other Doorway by Shannon Maguire. I'm very curious. I have heard so many good things about this book, and it's so tiny. I knew it was tiny before, but when it arrived today at my house, it was even tinier than I expected it to be. But I'm still very curious about reading it. Then we got first two parts in a German trilogy called Die Sturmkönige. First part is Zinland, and I already started reading it. I'm about 130 pages in. And the second part is Wunschpeak. This is a German YA/new adult book series. And first book is at least a retelling of 1001 Arabian Nights, with a war between humans and genies. Now we go into the final two books. The first one is Caraval by Stephanie Garber. I'm really curious about this book. I'm really curious about the story in this book, and just to have a good premise. It takes place into a circus show. The final book on my TBR is The Resurrectionist by E.B. Hudspeth. It's a combination of a fantasy story and an anatomy book, but anatomy of mythical creatures, which I really love. I find it a really nice twist. Blurb by Aaron Morgenstern, who says, "Disturbingly lovely. The Resurrectionist is a cabinet of curiosities stitching history and mythology and sideshow into an altogether different creature, deliciously macabre and beautifully grotesque." And then we have Chase Novak, who says, "A masterful mashup of Edgar Allan Poe and George Louis Borges, with the added allure of gorgeous, demonically detailed drawings. I've never seen anything quite like The Resurrectionist, and I doubt that I will ever forget it." So I'm really curious about reading this one. The drawings are so beautiful, and I'm curious about the story behind it. This was it for now. Thank you for watching, and återkommer!